Hello everyone. Welcome to Behind the Lens Conversations. I will be connecting with Tafari in a second. I hope everyone is well and safe. How's everyone doing? Hello. How's everyone doing? Hello,
Hey, hey,
Tafari.
peace. What's
Good
going on?
morning. Is it afternoon or good morning?
It is afternoon here. It's 1 o'clock. So good evening on your side. And
Yes, sir. And just wanted to say happy birthday to you.
appreciate it. Indeed. Thank you for being willing to be in conversation on my birthday. No, that was a blessing when you said it. We chopped it up a few weeks ago. I was like, oh, that would be grand. So no,
Yes,
this.
yes. How did you celebrate your birthday?
I mean, first by waking up. No, but in all seriousness, so far it's been pretty easygoing. Yeah, didn't work today in some of my other gigs. I went to a cafe, finishing up a book that I've been reading for the last month or so, and actually I have it here. Super super dope book called Paolu's Diaspora, uh,
Nice.
about this cat from Bermuda, who we may talk a little bit about. So sips and
Okay.
got some photos, did some reading, and then got excited for this, and got to go pick up the kids in a little bit, and then typical stuff. I'm sure they got some things up their sleeves that they're gonna surprise me with as well.
That's good. That's good. Hey, it's I mean, it's a blessing to be alive and to be, breathing and to do what you're supposed to do. So, hey, I think that's the most important thing. Yes.
Indeed. So yeah, how about you? How's the day been on your side?
Doing pretty good. It's just the weather. It's quite very hot, extremely hot. But it's pretty good so far. Of course, with the whole crisis going on with the world, it has increased prices, fuel prices and all that. So it's a bit difficult, but hanging in
Same,
there.
no, same on this side. Yeah, capitalism. Yeah, which
Okay, yeah. So, but let's talk about photography and your love for storytelling per se. So how did you start photography? What's pushed you or what pursued you to go on that path?
word. Well, I'll say in some ways, a lot of it is actually intertwined. Um, I've traveled a lot in my life so far, my young 32 years. And so I first got exposed to photography through my mother, who was born in the Midwest in the United States, a place called Minnesota. She and my dad met in California, where my sister and I were born. And my mom was a photographer.
Wow. Okay.
And so, so yeah, she put together some small exhibitions and pieces, just kind of like exploring, like Black and African identity, and documenting family and places and stuff like that. So I was always kind of around it. And but as I was growing up, I played basketball. I was, just a young kid doing stuff. But I remember when I was maybe 12, my mom had me read Gordon Parks' book, A Choice of Weapons, and um, though at the time I wasn't like, oh yes, I'm going to go be a photographer. I think it was really instrumental for me to see like to meet photography through the way that my mom was doing it, really as a tool to explore again identity, connection, culture,
Okay.
Africanism, what have you. And so my senior year in high school, and I went to six high schools in four states: California, Georgia, Minnesota, and Maryland. When I was in
Wow.
out in West Baltimore. Uh,
Okay.
went there, tried out, made the basketball team, decided that I didn't want to play. And so I had an open class period and I took a photography class because at the time I was, and this is what, 2006, 2007, like I was really kind of like socially and politically inclined. So like I had read a lot about like Pan-Africanism. I had, through moving so many different places, I'd gotten to connect with Somalis, Ethiopians, Eritreans, Liberians, Cape Verdeans, West Indians, so on and so forth. And I was always the kid that was like the black kid born in the States that was, they were like, oh, but those Africans, they don't like African Americans. And I was always like, well, that's never been my experience. Like
Yeah.
we've been having great times, and not just because I say hey, you say hey. It's like, no, we really cultivated relationships as people. And so and getting the chance to kind of learn film photography coupled with my interest in politics and culture and all that kind of jazz. I was never quite moved to be a photographer that was like, let me take really nice.
Not sure what's going on. Hello. Hold on. Hello. All right. I think we have a connection problem with Tafari. Let me get him back. 1 second. Just bear with us. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, no worries at all. No worries at all.
I'm not
So
sure what
to myself to talk less. But, so yeah, to make a long story short, started shooting my senior year in high school in Baltimore. Graduated from high school and was started working with some grassroots Pan Africanist organizations in and around Baltimore.
happened.
And so for me, photography was always kind of like um, a vehicle to explore my and develop my social and political interests at the time, which again, of course, were like changing the material conditions of Black folks living in inner city Baltimore, by extension, connecting that to larger conversations around, Pan-Africanism, community organizing, and all that kind of jazz. And we can get more into it, but that's really kind of what started my journey in photography. And I kept kind of, having this on again, off again relationship with it, where I would be like, oh, I'm gonna, go out and shoot and document things. And then in a lot of the circles I was running in, there was, a lot of conversation about participating in movement work and organizing. And I at the time didn't have the political grounding really to like trust my artwork as a vehicle to contribute to that work. So I was always like, I do photography, but I needed
Okay.
to be a little more materially impactful for our folks. But photography would always keep coming back. And it's what I love to do. So it's really been a journey of embracing something that I've really been doing for the last, 13 years. And kind of being like, you know what? Like, I keep doing these other things. Photography keeps accompanying me with them. Um, and I hadn't seen a lot of artists in my childhood growing up that like I would see a lot of people that would use art as a way to escape, and which has its own conversation. And I was like, well, I don't want to escape what's happening. I want to participate in what's happening.
Yeah.
And I had seen that more in social and political arena, so I kind of trended in that direction more. But then I was like, you know what? Like, just let me do me as a photographer and let that be my contribution to what's happening. So, yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
Okay, amazing. And as far as you traveling and then taking photography and getting active in the political and social concerns and issues, and I'm sure it's intertwining. Do you see yourself in that specific, I don't want to say lane or section, aspect of photography, or you may, double and dab into other sectors of photography?
So yeah, no, I definitely see myself as in that lane. Like I think any good photographer first is a great storyteller. And a great storyteller, I think it's important to me that I'm a deep and present listener. And yeah, I think for me, it's important for my own anchor in the world to root my photography work in something that at least makes attempts at benefiting the people that I'm working with, the communities I'm working around, because the camera for me is a tool for connection less than like, oh, I can make something pretty. It's like, no, how do we again contribute to conversations of identity, culture, history, movement, politics, changing conditions, changing outcomes, giving people an opportunity to know each other,
Yeah. And from each other. Yes.
through these stereotypes that are often given to us to consume by mainstream and Western media. Like, how do we, as a colleague of mine talks about, how can we communicate with each other without translators getting in the middle of it? So like have a complete and total understanding of each other, but let's at least meet each other through honest eyes. And I think that's kind of what I want to do, is like bring different communities together. Like when I lived in Baltimore, I would know some folks that was like, I grew up in East Baltimore, live here, and I'm going to die here. I don't ever need to see West Baltimore. And for me, it's someone that, again, moved all across the country when I was younger and all that kind of stuff. I was like, yo, there's so much that the world has to
Yeah.
offer.
Yeah.
So many different types of people doing so many different types of things. We may think that the conditions that we're dealing with are tough, and they are, and they're not unique if we understand like the global or more even regional implications of what's happening. And so I see my photography really is like, yeah, like photojournalism, documentary style storytelling, and as a part of broader Pan-Africanist exchange, and then hopefully, organizing and movement work too.
Okay. And excellent. So, what has been some of the responses so far? People that have encountered your work, that have actually, witnessed your work from Instagram, or I'm sure you've done some exhibitions.
So yeah, so I've done a few. Most of the perception so far has been like, let's see, how would I say it? I, I'm in a period now,
Yeah.
where I am representing
Okay.
my work, and kind of, how do I want to say, stepping intentionally into like embracing my photography work and being known in that way. So I think, there's always been like friendship, and like, colleagues that have been like, your work is phenomenal, this is fantastic, been, able to sell a few prints here and there. I think one thing that I'm working on better this year and moving forward is uh, packaging and presenting projects that can kind of participate in these discussions a little more formally. Because I think now what's been happening is that I've also taught photography for what, maybe 4 or 5 years in different capacities,
Okay.
and so I've always taught it through this social justice lens, like how do you use
Okay.
photography to explore. So I think there's kind of like an underground community like based relationship that I have that I really love, and now I'm starting to kind of gather those um, projects, gather that work as I'm working on producing some other things, and then birthing that to share and participate. So I would say, ask me that question again in a year, and I have a.
Much clearer. Okay.
Oh,
I
I know
think.
people have been like, it's good, like they love it. They
Okay.
love. You'll notice on my feed, like, um, I'm really interested in portraiture,
Yeah.
and portraiture of African descendant people.
Yeah.
Um, there are very specific and intentional reasons behind
Yes.
that you can get into as well.
Okay. I think someone has a question for you, Joanna, Abena Puma. Yeah. Do you see the question?
Yes, it's good
Okay.
to know that you choose to participate in the happenings around you. How do you stay neutral and objective in what you capture while projecting your own position of views in the midst of it all? Wonderful question.
Yeah.
Uh, Short form of it, for me, is I don't subscribe to the notion of objectivity. I think objectivity is a myth. I think is it's a tool in communication studies, and there's a difference between remaining neutral and I think telling the truth about what's there. And so this is why for me, I'm so, yes, I'm a photographer, but I see that in a network of other things that I do. I study a lot. I read a lot of different things, photography related, social justice related, historically related, so that as I'm participating in these communities in relationship with people, movements, and histories, I am like I'm okay with having a developed opinion even as I am participating. So for me, I don't try to remain neutral. I don't try to remain objective because I think the conditions that our folks are dealing with are not neutral and objective. Well, people outside of Chicago, for example, where I live now, like are not poor and brutalized because they wake up and make bad decisions. Like they're and for me to, as a photographer and as a person of African descent, to come into this community without an awareness of the history of not just folks like Fred Hampton, but of the Black Panther Party broadly, of the segregation in the South Side of the city, the movement of a lot of African Americans from the South to places like Chicago through the Great Migration, the racism and brutality that they folks are subject to here, the incredible artwork that's been produced out of the city, the incredible activism that's been produced out of the city, like those things do sway people's outcomes in life. And so for me to try to remain neutral, I think would be doing a disservice to again
Yeah.
conditions that are in motion. And
Yeah.
so again, I strive to be like to tell an honest account,
Yes.
fact, and I'm not anyone, but particularly I am a Pan-Africanist. I am, down for Black people. I do want the material conditions of African descendant peoples to change. I want us to become proper holders of community and individual power. So it's like I can't go to a community and say, "Oh, how do I tell a neutral story?" It's neutral. But wonderful question. Wonderful.
Yes, it's a great question. Yes, yeah. And as far as traveling around the world, where will you say are some of your favorite places that you've been so far, and why?
Let's see. Around the world. Of course, Ghana.
It has to be on there.
Um, and really, no, Ghana was the first place that I was the first time I touched African soil.
Okay.
And so
Wow.
that always be special to me in that way. And specifically in Ghana, Bolgatanga and Tamale were two places that
Amazing.
I really, really
Yes.
enjoyed being in. And I haven't been in years, so there's a lot has changed, I'm sure. But um, yeah, so Tamale, Bolgatanga, Winneba on the coast, Cuba. I spent some time in Havana. Incredible, incredible place. Where else? Jamaica, Ethiopia, and in Ethiopia, Axum in the north. Was just an incredibly fulfilling space to be in, but in the same way, beyond like the places, like neighborhoods and streets of again, the south side of Chicago to me is an
Yeah.
incredible place. So even as
Yeah.
I'm like, Ghana, that's like also like Roseland, West Pullman, Inglewood, Chatham,
Yeah.
Baltimore, like, walking down for people that may be not familiar, North Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue in Baltimore, where there's a really dope bookstore there called Everyone's Place. It's like this incredible nexus of just like, because Baltimore is an incredibly Black city. It's an
Yeah.
incredibly economically impoverished city. So you have, and then like there's a dense housing stock. So like people are literally like row houses. People are like on top of each other. And but it's also incredible, like the street vibrancy that you may not get in that we do get in places like Accra, that we do get in places like Kumasi, where people are walking and doing
Yeah.
things. In Atlanta, as an example, that same type of like vibrant street culture doesn't really
Mhm.
exist because it's such a car dependent city. And so for me, like special places are really anywhere Black people are because
Yeah.
what we stuff like it's at least that's the way that I see it. Yeah.
I mean, from my personal experience living in the States for about 12 years, most of the time I spent most of the time in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I can tell the similarities in the
Mhm.
culture, the people, especially. I mean, most of them are from African descent.
Exactly.
So, I mean, traveling around the world where Black people are, what do you say are the similarities, or what's the common thread that ties us all together?
Man, I think that that we're such a beautiful people. That there's so much diversity, there's so much uniqueness, and that not that we are merely defined by the struggles that we've endured and are enduring, but look at what we've been able to produce under like some of the most arduous circumstances. Like, we were brought to this part of the world literally to not be human beings, but to be like labor. And then its counterpart of colonialism on the continent is a part of a larger project of colonization, like around the world. Like, just look at who we are, the music
Yeah.
that we produce, the families
Yeah.
that the things that we organize for. Like, again, all over the world, you know, Black folks are trying to get what? Better housing, better education, better roads, better outcomes. So it's like we are um, we are so beautiful to me, and that we strive to um, just be ourselves. And um, and when left to our own devices, like we produce such, and it doesn't mean we're perfect people, but we produce, such harmonious relations, I think.
Okay.
And then to me, that's special. That's not negligible. Uh, like the way we dance, the way sun hits our skin, the way we make food, the way we talk trash, the way we be with each. Like, yeah, I could wax poetic about what I love about us anyway.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. And as far as photography per se, what's your favorite medium to use?
um,
Because I see you have a lot of black and white photos as well.
yeah,
So talk
I,
about that too. Yeah.
uh, I'm all about black and white.
Okay.
So I learned on a film camera, Pentax K1000, I think. Wonderful to learn film photography because I think though I don't shoot with it anymore at the moment, um, I think it taught me just as like the digital era was coming full force, where it's like now I can have 8,000 images on a memory card,
Hmm.
um, having 16, 24, 12 shots, and then
Yeah.
that's the film. I think really like taught me to be patient, and to
Yes.
look at what's there
You
uh,
should.
before I snap, or gather there. So yeah, I think for me, I tell people all the time. Obviously, like well, not obviously, but I see in color. But when I'm behind the lens, like I see in black and white. Like I see tones and shades, grayscale, and I love color photography. But I think for me, there's something that can be distracting about the reds and the golds, this and the that.
Okay.
And there's an essence that I think excites me that black and white photography like allows, because it's like, no, like you have to deal with the content of what's here because it's just black, white, and gray. um, and then texture, tone, lighting, and what story is that telling? And again, I'm not hating on other, color photography. It's wonderful. I shoot in color, but
Yeah.
when it's like, what do I see? Like I see in black and white.
See, black and white. Okay.
Love
All right. Okay. I think we have a question. How do you navigate different black cultures' relationship with being documented, especially with convos around Western verism come to the forefront?
Word. Shout out to Ahmed, the Angel King, good friend of mine. I have to tell a short story about him. He actually, I remember I was shooting in. I'll answer the question. I was shooting in where was I? Uh, Near Afajato.
Okay.
And
Puerto region.
yeah,
Yes.
Alta region, Afajato, Tagbo Falls. That's what it's called.
Okay.
And my camera got wet. The mist from it didn't agree with my camera, and it went out. And Ahmed was here, and I remember coming back to the States, and he let me borrow his camera for like 6 months just so I could.
Wow.
Shout out to Ahmed,
Kudos to you.
because there was a gap there. I didn't have
Yeah.
the money to go get another one or get it fixed. But towards your question, um, I think again, it's for me, it's about listening and participating and going slow, and asking questions. And like for me, it's like who I am with a camera is who I am without a camera. So you're gonna get the same Tafari anywhere. So I am like I'm only in places that I want to learn more about, that I enjoy being in, that I'm in relationship with people in, because otherwise it does become this voyeurism, like you're talking about, Ahmed, where then it's like, I'm just here to grab a story or take some pictures of some black or brown faces, and take it from there. I remember, and sometimes that means keeping the relationships and not
Yeah.
getting the. I remember when I was in Texas in 2011, maybe. Don't quote me on the year. I was photographing something there that was called a trail ride. So it's like black cowboys, black cowgirl culture.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yes. Yes.
super, super incredible stuff.
Yeah.
I was a young photographer, none of this facial hair and all that stuff. And I'm going around with my camera and everywhere I'm going, like these black folks in this town, Cleveland, Texas, about 45 miles north of Houston. You know, there was this, like, who are you? What are you doing with the camera? This, that, and the third. And I got offended because there were some white anthropologists, I think, from
Okay.
Florida that were there doing the same thing. And anywhere they were, people were like posing. They were so open and da 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 da. And so for me, and I was annoyed by it, but I was also like, I understand the dynamics that are at play. I look like just a brother with a camera, where in these, you know, these white folks, these white Americans are unique in the space because there's just a bunch of black people there, and because of the histories of race and racism and racialization and oppression, it's like in power. There was just a different relationship that folks had. So I think for me, it it gets down to, again, prioritizing relationships over photographs, even in that sense. And when I do get permission to document, that I do right by what's there. So it's not that I have a hands-off approach, but I don't feel like I need to control a place because I trust what I've built. Um, and then, the conversations that emerge can come from there, and try to do right by that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think in the same vein, Joanna is also asking, as a photographer who understands capturing moments for posterity's sake, how do you differentiate between moments to be captured and moments just to be lived in the
Ooh,
moment that is without a camera?
wonderful, wonderful question. Yeah, great question. How do I differentiate between the two? I make decisions on the spot. Like I am, and I don't mean that to imply like there's some like haphazard approach to what I'm doing. But I think for me, I will, if I'm excited to pull my camera out, I will. Uh, if I'm not, I won't. And that in excited maybe is not even, it's too strong of a word. Um, I think I just kind of decide on the spot because, yeah, there is. I know when I used to photograph a lot of cultural events in Maryland, people ask me like, "How was it?" And I was like, "I don't know. I was photographing it," and because it is a different mode.
Yeah.
But either so there's three primary areas where my photography happens. So I think in some ways I get to like cheat a little bit. I do a lot of low portrait work, so like long form interviews with people, conversations, what have you. So I get to know someone. We get to have the experience. We get to make some photographs. I will go to a lot of like protests and social justice movement things. In there, I am like documenting like the energy, the essence of what's there, and I see it as me participating in it. And there will be some moments where, like even one of the pictures that you use to promote this gathering
Yes, I love that image. Yes.
was thank you was in Atlanta right after Rayshard Brooks, who was a brother that lived in Atlanta, was murdered by Atlanta police, and there was a lot of protesting around it. And I remember that brother, and there were like 3 or 4 days of protests. And that brother, in this beginning of COVID pandemic and all that kind of jazz, and so folks tried to take the highway, and they had run up this hill that takes you on top of an interstate. Police were there and all that kind of jazz. And I'm not shooting for any media outlets. I'm not shooting for, it's completely self-motivated. So I'm there on my own volition, on my own dime. And I think that gives me, and I like that because it gives me a freedom to say, no, I don't have to, oh, these are the images I want to take, but this is what the editors want to tell. It's like, no, I can be with,
That's freedom. Yes.
ooh, exactly. I can be in community with the movement without having to appease people who frankly may have a different, and I would say sometimes even antagonistic social, political, cultural understanding of what's happening. It's like, no, I ain't trying to tell a story that makes sense to people for their comfort. I'm trying to document things that, and participate in documenting things that help move people to better places. And so for me, like I literally enjoy that. So it's not like it's not a job for me. I see it as a part of like my life's work. So how do I differentiate? I think it is as simple as, how do I want to participate in this moment? Do I want to put the camera up and document it? Do I want to chant? Do I want to make sure this person that got pepper sprayed is okay? Do I want to like,
Yes,
uh,
yes.
so I think it's just being present, and based on that, trusting what I decide to document and trusting what I decide to remember, so to speak.
So another question, but I just want to. Based on what you're saying. So is it much more difficult in situations like that, as far as like protests and all that? How do you deal with that internally once all that is said and done, and you are in the editing room? What's what is that feeling like, especially in such situations?
It's a range of things. I think that there's obviously, I think like a righteous anger that these are the conditions that people are dealing with. Because again, like, what are people protesting? In this case, an end to police brutality, like, which is not a radical thing to try to transform, but given the conditions of what we're dealing with, people saying crazy idea, police shouldn't murder people, then it's a challenge. So I think so. There's a righteous anger that's again a product of like my participation in it without overinflating my like who I am. I'm not like, oh, I'm this amazing, wonderful, and what I'm saying. No, I'm making a contribution. It's joy in the sense that because all of this comes from for me like an easy and incredibly deep love for our people. Like, and I mean that in like the global sense and also in the specific sense. And so I am also like, you know, I love seeing the expressions, the power, the defiance, because I'm definitely not one of those people that is like, oh, like, you shouldn't be angry. We have a lot to be angry about. We have a lot to be frustrated about. We have a lot to be, completely and utterly irate about. And so I don't ever want to try to massage the rage that our folks are feeling as much as I want to, frankly, inspire people to ask why. And then then for me, it's like I tell my photography students this, like, part of the tool of photography to me is that once if I make an image that grabs your attention, now we can have a conversation.
Conversation, yes, yes, plays a
And
pro.
that's not for me to school you or teach you, but I was there. I again, I study social justice movements broadly and historically, so it's like I'm able to participate in a conversation in a way that's not just like, oh yeah, this was some black people with their fists in the sky, and
Yeah,
was this and they were protesting something or another, and hashtag black excellence. Like, no, like there's so much there.
good,
Um
yes, yeah.
like I got some jazz playing, some tea, and editing some stuff up, and my editing process is very, very straightforward. I try to do a lot of the
Okay.
work,
Mhm.
like, bump up the contrast a little if need be. Did this get there? If it did, cool. If it didn't, then let me move on, because I'm also like, if the shadow fell on their face like this, that's how the shadow fell on their face. Like,
Yeah,
if this arm is a little funky when they were moving like that, that's
yeah,
literally
that's what happened. Yes, yeah.
right by what literally happened. But yeah, so when I'm in the editing room, I I'm taking myself back to what was there, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the conversations, people, and so yeah, I think the righteous anger, a joy, and a sense of love, that you you know photograph people and movements that are trying to make the world a place, as cliche and necessary as that sounds.
Okay. So what will you say is the most valuable thing or experience you've had so far, um, working as far as trying to tell our stories and trying to create a forum for discussion and all that. So, what would you say is the most valuable lesson you've learned or experience you've had?
That's a cool question. I have to think about that. Hmm. There are the most valuable. There are, I would say, the people that I've been able to meet. Um, the spaces that I probably would have had, I would have never been in had it not been for I choose to photograph. So I've gotten to organize with um, political prisoners in the United States, people like Mumia Abu Jamal, Dr. Kapoor. I've gotten the chance to meet her, Asada Shakur, and all that kind of stuff. In Cuba, I had the opportunity to connect with an incredible filmmaker, this older woman named Gloria Rolando that does incredible stuff. The Ethiopian filmmaker, highly about the space. Um, Eddie Conway, a Baltimore Black Panther. Like, there's so many people. Mukasa Ricks, the brother who coined the term Black Power, is still alive, living in Atlanta. Like, so I've been
Mate,
able to in a lot of people who are, frankly, like my heroes. Like, people who say, "Oh, LeBron James." Like, when I was 12, 13, I was like, my favorite basketball player, as an example, was Kembe from, and so I was like, no. So for me, it's been and the most what's been the most valuable is like people whose work I deeply respect have told me to keep going. And that's and then I've just got to be so many in in Accra. Like, I have family there. If I step off of a plane in Los Angeles, I have family. Step off
yes,
of Portland, I got uh, the very places. So, like, yeah, that'd probably be the best thing. Like,
amazing, amazing. And so as far as traveling, is there any particular place you are yet to go that you really want to?
yeah, definitely. Wow, definitely. So I think, and this is a broader point, um, that I haven't been. So the easy answer is Brazil. I want to go to Brazil because I practice a martial art called capoeira, capoeira
Whether
Angola,
yes, okay,
and Brazil. Brazil has the largest concentration of African
yes, yes,
descent, and so I'm really intrigued by this idea of the American South. It was this rich cultural nexus of various African peoples and communities. The north of Brazil has that same kind of thing. So as you get that kind of like equatorial African experience, diasporic African experience is there. So like Brazil, it really, I would say the Central and South America broadly, because I think what I've seen a lot of Pan African circles in the United States is folks will like jump to the continent so quickly, and there's like so much history and
yes,
culture
yes, no,
um, in Canada, in
yes.
Halifax, Nova Scotia, in the blue fields in Nicaragua, in so like there's so to me like I really want to go check out some of these places that are often not talked about to kind of like bring them to the forefront. Places like Curacao,
Okay.
um, I haven't been to Haiti yet. I'd love to go to Haiti just because Haiti's contribution to global Black is just remarkable. Venezuela, but also, I'm interested in like places like Cambodia, South Pacific, Pacific Islands, places like Vanuatu, West Papua New Guinea, uh,
Yes,
because and not that I'm just on a search for the rare, but I think that there are some already well trodden paths that even I want to go down again. But if I see my work is really one of like connecting worlds, I would love to participate in that. Like, as an example, some other work I had done in Rwanda, there was this idea of getting like African text and content from different authors around the world, and in Rwanda, translating those texts into Kenya, Rwanda, as opposed to even French and stuff like that, because we were trying to give, and not give is a poor choice of words, create an environment where people felt excited and comfortable about the utility of our own indigenous tongues and African
Okay.
language. So people didn't have to imagine like, what's a good, like, if here's a good one. If people could learn about Malcolm X without having to learn English, as an example.
Okay.
It's like,
Okay.
oh no, I speak Kenya Rwanda. I can learn about Malcolm X in Kenya Rwanda.
Yes.
I can learn about and make it an exchange. Like, no, we also have people in Rwanda, or imagine like people being able to learn, like South Africans being able to learn about a Komfo Noche in Zulu,
Yes. Makes sense. Yes. Yeah.
so that we can start to produce this like intracultural like new canon of conversation and discourse, so that we don't have to always traverse colonial trails to be able to reach understandings of ourselves, to then in turn try to put those into an environment so it's like the calculus I understand, and it's mixed up.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I think we have another question. What's your best capture so far and your worst?
uh,
What are the reasons for each being so, and which moment in time do you wish you had captured but didn't? That's a very heavy question, but
that's
go ahead.
yeah. You have
Very
the
much
great.
loaded.
uh, my best capture so far. There is an image of my nephew. It's called The Water, somewhere down my timeline. I'll share it as a story so people can see it. It was in South Carolina, a place called Beaufort, huge Gullah Geechee cultural history that I would encourage folks to look at. But we were just there on some family vibes at the beach. And he was in the water, and I was in the water. And he was, just jumping around doing his little, I think he was like 10 at the time, 10-year-old magical stuff. And I just started documenting it, and like the way that the images were coming out, this very like ethereal, I guess would be a word to use.
Okay.
Like moment. I was like, wow, this is beautiful. And so then I asked him to like throw the water up in the air and just to see what it would do.
Yeah,
And I
I've seen the image you're talking about. Yes. Yeah.
that was my jam.
Yeah.
My worst, you'll never know. No, I'm kidding. My worst. Let me see. My worst capture. Part of the challenge with that question, and it's a good question as an exercise.
Is that even
Oh,
assessed as a worst picture in my opinion?
yeah. I'm trying to figure out like how I'm thinking. I don't even know if I have a mode of analysis to
Yes.
determine like I probably the worst thing. I just probably wouldn't have even took the picture.
Yeah.
But with taking some license to maybe remix the question a little bit, a series of images I will forever be disappointed in. I was in Ethiopia, Nile Valley Gorge, driving through beautiful place, and we stopped on top of a mountain, and we were just like looking out into the gorge. You see the Nile River, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'm gonna take some pictures of those shots. Look like they just don't do justice to what happened, to the beauty that was there. So I think for me, I learned that yeah, there are some things that even the best camera just can't get. And the last part, and which moment in time do you wish you had captured but didn't? Is that like any time or a place that I was at? That's a wonderful
I
question.
think both, because someone is also asking what about an image that you missed. So I think it falls in line. Perhaps
Uh-huh.
probably a moment in time or
Let's see. While I was born in 1990, so let me think about between 1990 and now. an image that I wish that that's a really good question. Let me images that I've missed. Let me go there first. Um, hmm. I'm struggling to answer that one. I'm gonna have to return to that one because I'm trying to go through the Rolodex of things that I've done, places that I've been, and what am I. Here's one thing I will say. I am forever sad that I never got to photograph Hugh Masekela.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I
That's
just
one. Okay.
never got the chance to meet him. My wife did twice, and she's in the chat, so I'm just throwing her a little shade. But she got to meet him twice. Uh,
Wow.
Never got to photograph Hugh Masekela. That would have been a treat. And then somewhere I would have liked to have been. This is gonna sound like from left field, but if people are students of history, um, I would have loved to photograph the moment that Maurice Bishop became prime minister in Grenada. That whole New Jewel movement in Grenada, I think, is just an incredible moment in history. This is the 1979 to 1983. Really
Okay.
good documentary called 4 Years of Love that talks about this period. Um, but yeah, I think Maurice Bishop was one of the most incredible like leaders that most people don't know about. And you know, definitely not without his shortcomings and blind spots like all of us. And incredible guy. So yeah, I think those two would probably be Hugh Masekela and Maurice Bishop.
Okay. So in that vein as well, who would you like to have lunch with, dead or alive?
Dead or alive. Now I'm gonna ask like the sister last time. It's like I just have to choose one.
Both,
And
actually.
actually and see, I'm seeing my wife is in the chat. Jim's Underground is my wife. Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. If I could have lunch with someone, it would be Paul Robeson.
Okay.
And do you know who Paul Robeson is?
No.
So Paul Robeson was, and I would encourage folks to check him out. Paul
Okay.
Robeson was oh, how do you describe in a so this historian Gerald Horn, who teaches,
Okay.
he said that Paul Robeson was the tallest tree in our forest. And what I mean by that, or what he meant by that, was that Robeson was an intellectual giant, an incredible athlete. He was I think he was the first Black person to play Macbeth. He
Okay.
was a global superstar before global superstars were a thing. And we're talking about the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So he was colleagues with folks like W.E.B. Du Bois, and he was hailed up by so many people like Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King, you know, Paul Robeson, Kwame Nkrumah is like, yo, Paul Robeson. You know, you go down the line of folks who we kind of like think about as like the titans of the Pan-African world, if you will. Like a lot of them like uh really mess with Paul Robeson really heavy. And he was, and his career was violently interrupted because he chose to stand on the side of oppressed people around the world. So especially in this moment now of conversations around
Yeah.
Russia and Ukraine and mythology, at least in Western media, that Russia is trying to recreate the Soviet Union. We can talk about that if we want to. It's not true as far as I'm concerned. Russia is a capitalist country. It is not a socialist leaning country in any way, shape, or form. All that's beside the point. Say that Robeson was a champion of anti-racism work, decolonial work the world over, to the extent at which his passport was revoked by the United States government.
Wow.
And to show you how popular he was banned since he lost his passport. He couldn't tour internationally, and Robeson was wanted everywhere. Like heads of state all over the world loved him. He was much more loved in Europe and the UK than he was here because
Okay.
the United States was seen as such and it was and still is such like a incredibly racist place but on the world stage, they were trying to say, hey, America is better than, the socialist bloc. And Paul Robeson was like, I mean, I'm traveling all over the world and I'm treated better in these countries than I
Yeah.
am here. So like, what are you talking about? And so they revoked his passport. He went to, but people were still so in love with him that he went to go perform. I think it was in Seattle, Washington.
Okay.
Not in Seattle, but in Washington State. And there's some park there. I forget the name of it, but 15,000 Canadians came to the border
Wow.
just to hear him sing.
Wow.
um, and that's not hyperbole. That's not, oh, you're just making it up. It's like, no, that's
That's
documented.
amazing. Okay.
I don't know. I know a lot of families. I don't know anyone that's been like, hey, you were banned from traveling to another country, so people can't afford to hear you do something. um,
Amazing. Wow.
so yeah, Paul
Okay.
Robeson, I guess, spend
Okay.
time.
Okay. What about someone alive?
Someone alive that I could spend time with. Mm, I gotta. So there's two people I'm thinking of, but I gotta be my favorite musician, my favorite artist, Sheung Kuti,
Okay.
who is the young the I think he's
Fela
a
Kutis. Yeah. One of the Fela Kutis children.
yeah.
Yes.
I
Okay.
had a chance to photograph him some years ago. Fortunately, I can call him a friend and a colleague, but we've never had lunch together. So yeah, I'd love to have lunch
Okay.
with Sheung.
Hopefully that will happen.
Yeah, indeed, 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 indeed.
Okay. All right. So let's answer one last question. It says, do you like taking pictures of children over grown folks?
Uh, hmm. I've never thought about it of making those kinds of distinctions. I love children. I really, 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 really love old people. And, and this is why. Sankofa Books and Cafe in Washington D.C., across the street from Howard University, incredible place. I was sitting there with Haile Garima, again, the famous filmmaker, most well known for the film Sankofa. If people haven't seen
Okay.
it, check it out. And he told me, he was like, and he talked a bunch of trash. He's like, Tafari, like, he's like, and he just said to me, like, in no uncertain terms, he was like, like, document wrinkles. He's like, so many people document young this and this, that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's so many stories, there's so much life in wrinkles. And that really, like, stuck with me. And so
That's very deep.
I think he, given that, and that pretty much all of my grandparents on both sides like were ancestors before I turned 15 or 16 or so. I don't see it as like a gap in terms
Mhm.
sense of like, oh, I'm trying to like feel some existential need, but I think that there is just like such a majestic thing about living 70 years, living 85,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and um, and gathering those stories of what people have been through, what they survived, what they've learned, so that we can, mine those stories, if you will, for things that help us in our daily navigation of things. Because there are oftentimes, I think, things, because a lot of us are not actively engaged in historical study. There are a lot of things that are new to us but aren't new to the world, and so we oftentimes can, as a colleague of mine says, fail at things that we've already failed at. And another thing that Haile Garima told me that I really really appreciated, and this is I think kind of where my interest in elders really rests, is like he also told me, he's like, no, like, your generation is only entitled to make new mistakes. Y'all can't make the mistakes that we made. If we do, that's our fault. And so I see that as a kind of a charge to say, well, let me gather stories of elders,
Hmm.
from the famous to the everyday, um, to gather a body of story, wisdom, of cautionary tales, of laughter, of fun, of trials and tribulation, um, not just for consumption, but so that, because as we were talking earlier, just like my photography is not neutral, storytelling is not neutral. And I want to tell a story. I'm non-neutral stories that hopefully inform and excite people to participate, get to know themselves more deeply, and have a good time doing it. Like, so yeah. So I think for me, like, and children are beautiful. But for me, like, I think elders, just they just have my
Yeah, very true, very true. Oh, and I mean, we behind the scenes we've been working on a project related to honoring elders. So that's something that we can talk about as well in detail. I mean, it's inspired by that African proverb where whenever an elder dies, a whole library is burned down. So yeah, to preserve their knowledge and to preserve their heritage, we can work on something to do that. So let's talk and see
yeah.
how
No,
best we.
good. Let's do it. I got one question for you since you said I can ask
Yes.
questions.
Yeah,
So,
sure. Go ahead.
um, so one, I just want to like put it out publicly that yeah, no, I was published in the sixth iteration of African Lens.
Yes.
It, like blew my mind when y'all reached out. So
Yes.
like you see, like I got it framed and all this
Oh,
stuff.
amazing. That's
Oh yeah,
amazing.
it was really meaning. It was and is really meaningful to me.
That's
And
amazing.
and we should save this part of the conversation for another day.
Okay. Okay.
But um, I would love to build with you about um, the positioning of those images and the term Black Lives Matter because it's
Yes.
an interesting conversation
Yes.
that we can
Yes.
talk.
Yes.
All that aside, um, I would love to hear from you, just like kind of like what's your take on the work that you've seen me produce? What's your thoughts, you know, and all that kind of jazz? Because I'm always interested in the conversation.
Yes. Uh-huh. So personally, I was drawn to the fact that you were able to capture the essence of Black people in different lights from different countries. That's why I actually asked you before, what has been experienced so far and what's a common thread that you see. I mean, I think you have a beautiful way of connecting all of us together in the same light, where sometimes it's even difficult to tell where exactly you took that picture from. Yeah, there are some pictures that I've seen that I think were shot in New Orleans. That initially I thought was in somewhere in Cape Coast or somewhere in Kenya, but it shows you how we're all connected in such a way. But I mean, as far as the protests and social justice images, I mean, it was during in the midst of that time. It was something that had to be documented. That can be part of history. As far as my take, it I think you're doing a very wonderful job as far as documenting and archiving. And for those that may not be familiar with stories of Black people in the United States and other countries, they will be able to learn a lot from it. And of course, conversations can be started. It's a bridge between cultures and countries and people. So that was my take from your photography. But I'm sure others will also agree with me once they see it. So yeah, thank you to um, the fact that you've dedicated your whole photography journey to this incredible. How do I even put it? I don't. I can't even find the right words, but documenting us. I'll put it that way. I'll put it that way.
Right. Now, I appreciate
Do you see yourself like extending from just photography to documentaries or film or something of that sort in the future?
so let me try to answer this. Uh, I would say probably not, but I won't close the door on it.
Okay.
And well, let me say this: I'm game to participate in those kinds of things. I don't know
Okay.
if I something like that. I think that I'm a big architecture buff as well, so
Okay.
I actually really appreciate constraints as a vehicle to like you know if you have a plot of land and the land slopes like this, you got to deal with it. Like if I want to build a house by the sea, I can't build it with architecture from the forest. And so I think for me, like I love being committed to still photography um, because it, and I know I may be losing out on some things, but I think it encourages people to slow down in a way that I really
Okay.
appreciate.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Artistic kind of stuff, absolutely. I've
Yeah.
taught film. I probably still continue to teach film in some ways, and really storytelling, but
Yeah.
brand like producing a series of things. Again, like I said, I won't rule it out, but I think I'm much more interested in producing uh, still-based projects, like text-based projects and
Got
community-based
it. Okay.
priorities.
Okay. Amazing. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time, Tafari, and looking forward to discuss more future projects with you. I mean, there's a lot for us to work on to do, and yeah, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge, your insights, your sharing us your world with you. So I truly appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. Hope to see you next time, and enjoy the holidays. All right. Well, have a good
Thank you.
night. All right.
Support African Lens.
All right. Thank you. Mhm.